Stellar underdogs. In the year 2189, humanity finally achieved what generations had dreamed of: contact with alien civilizations. After decades of listening to the stars, Earth received signals from the Galactic Assembly, a coalition of 27 spacefaring species that had been watching humanity's development with mild curiosity. First contact was celebrated worldwide with jubilation and hope. Humanity would finally take its place among the stars. No one expected the mockery that followed. You still rely on quantum tunneling for your communications, Ambassador Xelterix of the Vorelian Combine asked during the first diplomatic meeting on Earth's newly constructed orbital station. His translucent appendages rippled with what humans would later recognize as their version of laughter. Most civilizations abandoned such primitive methods within their first millennium of spaceflight. Dr. Ilara Vega, Earth's leading physicist and head of the diplomatic science team, felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Around the circular table, representatives from 12 different species exchanged glances and subtle gestures that didn't need translation. They found humans quaint, almost childlike. "Our understanding of physics is evolving rapidly," she replied, keeping her voice steady despite the humiliation. "We've made significant breakthroughs in recent decades." "Of course you have," said Meritocrat Ziv from the Altarian Conclave, her 6 eyes blinking in an asymmetrical pattern. "And in another few centuries, you might even develop rudimentary dimensional folding. Progress is progress, no matter how slow." More ripples of alien amusement circled the room. The diplomatic meetings continued for weeks, but the outcome was already clear. Earth would be classified as a developing world under assembly protocols, a designation that came with significant restrictions: limited access to galactic trade routes, severe technology transfer restrictions, no voting rights on assembly matters. Humanity would be permitted to observe galactic society, but not fully participate in it. "They're containing us," General Maya Santos said during the emergency meeting of Earth's Unified Defense Council. The holographic displays showed the restrictive zones where human ships would now be forbidden to travel. "These aren't protection measures. They're a cage." "They consider us children," President Omar Chen replied, his normally optimistic face drawn with concern. "Or pets, perhaps. Either way, not equals." Ilara Vega sat silently at the end of the table, her mind racing through calculations and theoretical models. She had suspected something like this might happen ever since she'd first begun studying the transmissions from assembly ships. Their technology operated on principles that indicated a fundamental understanding of dimensional physics that humanity was only beginning to grasp. Or so they thought. "There may be another way," she said finally, as the room fell into frustrated silence. All eyes turned to her. "The assembly operates on dimensional principles that we've been studying independently. They've mastered 5-dimensional travel, possibly 6. But my team has been working on something they don't expect from us." President Chen leaned forward. "Go on, Doctor." "The Prometheus Project. We've been developing it in secret for the past 8 years." She activated her own holographic display, showing complex mathematical equations and models that most in the room couldn't begin to understand. "We believe we can achieve 7-dimensional manipulation, not just travel through higher dimensions, but active manipulation of dimensional constants." General Santos frowned. "In English, please." "We can change the rules of physics within a controlled field," Ilara said simply. "Create our own pocket reality where we define what's possible." The silence that followed was profound. The implications were staggering. "How sure are you?" the president asked eventually. "The mathematics is sound. We've successfully tested microfields in the laboratory. We need 6 months and full resources to build a prototype vessel." 2 days later, the Prometheus project received unlimited funding and priority resource allocation. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility carved into the abyssal plain, Ilara and her team worked tirelessly, while Earth's diplomats stalled for time, pretending to accept the assembly's restrictions with good grace. Dr. Kai Nakamura, Ilara's longtime colleague and friend, voiced concerns as they worked through another sleepless night. The assembly has been traveling between stars for millennia. How is it possible they haven't discovered seventh-dimensional physics? Ilara looked up from her equations, her eyes bright despite her exhaustion. They've been limited by their own success. Their five-dimensional technology works so well they never needed to look beyond it. And some species may have tried but failed. The seventh dimension isn't just another spatial dimension. It's qualitatively different. Different how? It's where reality becomes malleable, where the constants we take for granted become variables. She pulled up a simulation showing cascading patterns of energy that seemed to fold in on themselves in impossible ways. And there's something else. I think consciousness plays a role. The observer effect, but magnified exponentially. Meanwhile, above the Earth, the assembly observation ships grew in number. Their official purpose was to assist humanity's integration into galactic society, but their scanning equipment constantly probed Earth's communications and energy signatures. They sensed something. Security Director Isabel Chang reported during a secure meeting 3 months into the project. The Altarians in particular have been increasing their surveillance. Their ships have been probing our defensive grids. How much longer? President Chen asked Ilara. 2 months minimum. We've solved the containment field problems, but we need to perfect the dimensional interface, and we need a pilot. A pilot. General Santos frowned. Can't the ship be operated remotely? Ilara shook her head. The seventh dimension responds to consciousness. We need someone physically and mentally aboard to guide the dimensional shifts. She hesitated. And it needs to be someone with specific neurological patterns, someone who can perceive dimensional relationships intuitively. How many candidates do we have? 1, Ilara said quietly. Me. The protests were immediate and vociferous. Ilara was too valuable as a scientist. The risks were unknown. But as the weeks passed and other candidates failed the neurological screening tests, the reality became unavoidable. Ilara's brain structure made her uniquely suited to interface with the seventh dimension. I've run the simulations thousands of times, she told President Chen during a private meeting. The safety protocols will protect me. And frankly, sir, we don't have a choice. The assembly is growing suspicious. The Altarians have requested a security inspection of our major research facilities. Chen looked older than his 60 years as he nodded slowly. How soon can you be ready? 4 weeks, maybe less. It took 3 weeks and 2 days. On a stormy night in October, with assembly ships maintaining their usual orbits above, the prototype vessel Hyperion was moved from its underground hangar into a massive submarine carrier. Beneath the raging Pacific waves, away from the watchful eyes of assembly sensors, the carrier moved to the designated launch area. In the carrier's staging area, Ilara prepared for the test flight. The interfacing chamber looked like a medical pod filled with translucent blue gel, a suspension medium that would protect her body from the physical stresses of dimensional shifting. The neural interface is stable, Dr. Nakamura reported, running final checks on her equipment. His hands were steady, but Ilara could see the concern in his eyes. Remember, if anything feels wrong, you activate the emergency return protocol immediately. I'll be fine, Kai, she said, trying to project more confidence than she felt. The mathematics is sound. Mathematics doesn't always account for reality, he replied softly. That's exactly what we're about to change. She smiled at her old friend, then lay back in the pod as the gel began to encapsulate her body. The neural interface activated, and Ilara felt her consciousness expand in ways she had never experienced before. Her perception extended beyond her physical body, into the systems of the Hyperion, and then beyond, into the fabric of reality itself. Through the ship's sensors, she could feel the assembly vessels in orbit, unaware of what was happening beneath the ocean's surface. She could feel the weight of their assumptions about humanity, primitive, backward, centuries from being worthy of true respect. Then, as the dimensional drive engaged, she felt something else entirely. the boundaries between dimensions began to blur, and Ilara Vega prepared to take humanity's greatest leap into the unknown. The assembly had laughed at humanity's primitive technology. They wouldn't be laughing much longer. Reality unbound. The Hyperion rose from the depths of the Pacific Ocean, water cascading from its obsidian hull like a metallic leviathan breaching the surface. To any observer, it would have appeared as merely an advanced submarine, unusual in design perhaps, but nothing extraordinary. The assembly surveillance satellites registered it as a simple oceanic research vessel, their algorithms dismissing it as irrelevant. Inside the neural interface chamber, Ilara Vega existed in two states simultaneously. Her physical body floated in suspension gel, protected from the gravitational stresses of what was to come. But her consciousness had expanded beyond flesh, intertwined with the ship's systems in ways that no ordinary interface could achieve. Dimensional drive at 70% capacity, she reported, her voice echoing strangely through the ship's communication systems. Preparing for dimensional boundary breach. In the monitoring station beneath the ocean, Dr. Nakamura and General Santos watched tensely as the Hyperion hovered just above the waves. Dozens of screens displayed vital signs, energy readings, and dimensional stability metrics. Is she supposed to sound like that? Santos asked, concern edging her voice. Nakamura shook his head. We're in uncharted territory now. In orbit, an Altarian observer ship detected an unusual energy signature from Earth's surface. Analysis indicates advanced particle manipulation, the sensor officer reported to Captain Nerovix. Pattern matches experimental dimensional technology. Nerovix's 6 eyes widened in surprise. Impossible. Human development projections indicate they're at least a century from achieving stable dimensional manipulation. Signature is growing stronger, Captain. Alert the assembly fleet. Begin targeted scanning protocols. But it was already too late. Aboard the Hyperion, Ilara felt the 5th-dimensional boundary approaching, the barrier that assembly ships routinely traversed. For a moment, she considered stopping there, making a simple demonstration that humanity could match the assembly's technology. No, that would only buy them status as equals among the lower tiers of galactic society. Humanity needed more. Proceeding to 6th-dimensional breach, she announced, feeling the fabric of reality begin to thin around the ship. Warning alarms blared across the monitoring station. Energy consumption is off the charts, one technician shouted. Containment fields at maximum capacity. Nakamura gripped the edge of his console. Ilara. Status report. Inside the interface chamber, Ilara barely heard him. Her consciousness was stretched across dimensions now, perceiving reality in ways no human language could describe. She could see the mathematical constants that governed physical laws, not as abstract concepts, but as tangible, malleable structures. Approaching 7th-dimensional boundary, she whispered, though the words seemed inadequate for what she was experiencing. The transition was violent. The Hyperion shuddered as space-time itself resisted the breach. For a terrifying moment, the ship existed in multiple states simultaneously, a quantum superposition made visible at macroscopic scale. In orbit, assembly sensors went wild. The Altarian ship's systems registered the impossible event occurring beneath them, then crashed from the paradoxical data. Emergency backups came online just in time to record what happened next. The Hyperion vanished. Not cloaked, not destroyed. Simply ceased to exist in conventional space-time. Where is she? President Chen demanded, his holographic projection flickering in the chaos of the monitoring station. Nakamura stared at readings that defied explanation. Everywhere. Nowhere. The ship has. He struggled to find words. The ship has created its own bubble of reality. In that bubble, Ilara experienced a moment of pure terror as her consciousness threatened to disperse across dimensions. The human mind was not designed to perceive 7th-dimensional space, but then her training took over. She focused on the mathematical anchors they had prepared, the conceptual frameworks that allowed her consciousness to maintain coherence. And suddenly, she understood. The seventh dimension wasn't just about traveling faster or farther. It was about rewriting the underlying code of reality itself. Ilara pulled herself back from the brink of dissolution and focused her will. Around the Hyperion, a new set of physical laws coalesced, laws of her own making. Dimensional stabilization achieved, she reported, her voice now resonating with harmonic overtones that hadn't existed before. Seventh dimensional state maintained. The Hyperion reappeared, directly alongside the assembly flagship in high Earth orbit. Admiral Jean Taval of the Galactic Assembly nearly leaped from his command chair when the human vessel materialized less than a kilometer from his ship. Impossible, he hissed, his dorsal spines flaring in alarm. No ship can bypass our detection grids. Sir, the human vessel is changing, his first officer reported, mandibles clicking in agitation. Outside the viewports, the Hyperion seemed to shimmer with possibilities. Its hull rippled with geometric patterns that couldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Light bent around it in ways that violated the laws of physics. Open communications, the Admiral ordered, regaining his composure. The face that appeared on the view screen was human, but somehow more. Ilara Vega's eyes contained reflections of realities no one else could see. "Greetings, Admiral," she said, her voice carrying undertones that resonated at a primal level with every species who heard it. "Humanity would like to renegotiate our place in the Galactic Assembly." Within hours, representatives from every major assembly species had gathered for an emergency council. The Hyperion remained in orbit, a black pearl surrounded by a halo of dimensional distortions that the most advanced assembly sensors couldn't fully analyze. In the Grand Council chamber of the assembly flagship, Ilara Vega stood before them, her body present, but her consciousness still partially extended through the Hyperion systems. She could perceive the fear and confusion radiating from the assembled aliens. "What you have done is impossible," Meritocrat Ziv of the Altarian Conclave stated, her earlier condescension replaced by wary respect. "No species has achieved stable seventh-dimensional manipulation. The mathematical problems are insurmountable." "For your approach to physics, perhaps," Ilara replied. "Humanity took a different path." Ambassador Exalterix leaned forward, translucent appendages now still with tension rather than rippling with amusement. "What exactly are you capable of with this technology?" Ilara smiled slightly. "Within the field generated by our ship, we can locally alter the constants of physics. We can change the speed of light, modify gravitational constants, even adjust how subatomic particles interact." The implications stunned the Council into silence. Such abilities went beyond mere technological advantage. They represented a fundamental shift in what was possible. Admiral Jean Taval finally broke the silence. "You understand that this development changes everything." "That's precisely why we're here," Ilara agreed. "Humanity will not accept the classification and restrictions you intended to impose on us. We come to you not as supplicants, but as equals, perhaps more." The negotiations lasted for days. Earth's diplomatic team, hastily transported to the assembly flagship, worked tirelessly to draft new agreements that recognized humanity's unique position in the galactic community. During a break in the proceedings, Ilara stood at a viewport, gazing at Earth gleaming blue and white in the distance. Dr. Nakamura, who had joined the diplomatic team, approached her cautiously. "You've changed," he said quietly. "Not just your consciousness, but your physiology. The seventh dimension has altered you at a fundamental level." Ilara nodded. "I can perceive things differently now. Reality is more fluid than we ever imagined." She turned to face him. "But I'm still me, Kai. Just more. And the ship. The Hyperion is just the beginning. What we've learned will transform human civilization. Energy production, medicine, computing. Everything changes when you can adjust the rules of reality itself." Nakamura's expression grew concerned. "The Assembly fears us now. I can see it in every interaction." "Fear can be the beginning of respect," Ilara replied. "But we need to show them we're not a threat. that we want to be partners, not conquerors. The final agreement was signed 1 week after the Hyperion's demonstration. Humanity would join the Galactic Assembly not as a developing world, but as a dimensional authority. A new classification created specifically for Earth. The technology transfer restrictions were lifted, and Earth ships would have access to all assembly territories. In return, humanity agreed to share the theoretical foundations of 7th-dimensional physics, though not the practical applications, at least not immediately. It would take most assembly species decades or centuries to fully understand the principles, let alone implement them. As the assembly fleet prepared to depart Earth orbit, Admiral Jean Taval requested a private meeting with Ilara. "You could have used this technology as a weapon," he said without preamble, his reptilian features unreadable. "You could have demanded far more than you did." Ilara studied him thoughtfully. "That's not who we are, or at least, not who we aspire to be." "Perhaps that is why you achieved what no other species could," the Admiral mused. "The 7th dimension responds to consciousness, to intent. Our scientists theorized this, but could never prove it. And your civilizations have been stable for so long," Ilara added. "You perfected what you knew rather than seeking the unknown, while humanity has always been driven to reach beyond its grasp." The Admiral made a gesture of respectful acknowledgement, a dangerous quality, but valuable. "The Assembly has grown complacent in its age. Perhaps you will remind us what it means to explore the truly unknown." As the Assembly ships disappeared into 5th-dimensional travel, leaving streams of exotic particles in their wake, Ilara stood on the observation deck of the Earth orbital station. The Hyperion floated nearby, its dimensional field now dormant but still humming with potential. President Chen joined her, looking both exhausted and exhilarated. "What happens now, Dr. Vega?" Ilara gazed at the stars, seeing not just points of light, but gateways to realities humankind was only beginning to understand. "Now," she said softly, "we truly begin our journey among the stars. Not as children or pets, but as pioneers of a new understanding of reality itself." Beyond Earth, the galaxy awaited, and humanity, once mocked for its primitive understanding, had just rewritten the rules of what was possible.